SBC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
A penny saved is a penny used set aside to pay your Massachusetts Gaming Commission fines, at least if you're DraftKings. The operator continues to have a busy July with a series of legal and regulatory wins, losses, and even a couple of détentes. But they live to fight another day in the U.S., which can't be said for yet another operator that is saying bon voyage to America. We'll run down the stories on both on today's episode of iGaming Daily. iGaming Daily is brought to you by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. I am Jessica Welman, managing editor of SBC Media, joined by media manager Charlie Horner. And Charlie, I hope you are excited. You don't get to write about Massachusetts Gaming Commission anymore, but today we get to talk about truly the greatest thing that I've ever watched on these meetings.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I've missed reporting on the MGC for a while. Everyone's favorite US regulator from an entertainment standpoint anyway. And eager to dig right into this one. And I'm sure DraftKings legal team will be really happy that we're talking about them yet again.
Yeah. Hey, we'll talk about some wins too. But yeah, you truly, as we were prepping the pod, I was like, okay, I know this sounds weird, but you really need to watch this one clip from the meeting. And Charlie's like, ooh, yes, where is it? That's how much we nerded out on this. So I guess I should explain what this whole thing is about. Okay, so in Massachusetts, the regulation around credit cards is very specific. One, you can't deposit with them. There are a few states that do this. What Massachusetts also expects is that, say, I fly to Boston and I've funded my account here in Kentucky with a credit card, which is totally fine. If I go to Boston and want to bet while I'm there, they're supposed to, operators, segregate those funds so that I can't use them while I am in Massachusetts. You with me so far?
It's rather confusing, but I'm with you.
Yeah, it's tricky, but I will say, like, in the lead up to launch, it was pretty clear this was how they intended for it to work. Except DraftKings said they didn't understand it that way. So they reported 3 different incidents of accepting credit cards under the term that violate the terms I just kind of spelled out. One was like right at launch. They thought they had fixed it. Then it turned out they hadn't. And then there was like one very obscure thing called pools that they kind of forgot to turn off. Less important. Rather than just like, because it's the MGC, you don't just say, sorry, we did that, and you pay a fine, and you hold your hand out, you get your slap. This was like A Few Good Men. It was like a full-blown trial. There were witnesses, there was questioning, response interrogations on both sides, evidence, and it took like 10 hours over 2 days, one day in September, one day in December, for them to just hear evidence in this. And then we found out this week, 7 months later, they agreed that, or the Massachusetts Gaming Commission determined the fine is going to be $450,000.
Yeah, I mean, I've got two thoughts on this. One is I'm not that surprised it was 10 hours because it's the MGC, and we spent so much time with the MGC during the licensing period that it kind of felt like they were close family by the end of that process. But the other thought is, I guess I can understand it to a certain extent that they want to understand how it happened, why DraftKings let this one slip. I guess it is a really technical process to segregate funds from one state that were deposited here and are being active in Massachusetts. So that's a complex process that I'm sure the regulator kind of wants to understand how it happened and put into place a process so it doesn't happen again. But 10 hours is a lot.
Yeah, well, some of it too is that DraftKings, it's not to say they disagreed with the MGC, but their argument was, reading your regulation, how could we have known this is what you meant, kind of, was what they were saying. And they had said, well, GLI approved us, and, if they approved us and you work with them, why were they okay with it and didn't flag it? And part of a good chunk of the 10 hours was looking at, did we talk about this on the pod before? Like company Slacks of people talking with one another?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've done an episode on this before that you guys can go back. We'll find and link. The idea is that, to be fair, at the time, nobody else had done it this way. Tennessee had done no credit card deposits in Tennessee, but I could drive to Tennessee and play on other funds. So some of this was, as DraftKings argued, confusion based on what was going on in other places. But a clip that we highlighted, and the clip I told Charlie to check out, is when the Take No Nonsense Commissioner Eileen O'Brien interrogated a DraftKings employee on just where she pulls up the statutes on the screen and is just point to where in the statute it says that it has to be in Massachusetts. And it was just a very aggressive moment of just the words on the page say something.
Yeah, it was a real dressing down. I would implore everyone to go and, A, read the story because it's great, and B, check out that clip because he's getting scolded. It's like a misbehaving child at school getting a real telling off from the headmaster. So I felt sorry for him in that moment. We
put the clip on the website, but I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a taste. It's 4 minutes long, but I'll give you a little taste right now of how this went.
I was reading the Massachusetts statute and the Massachusetts regulation as being specific to Massachusetts.
Okay.
So
I'm going to move on to 205. CMR 247.077. A sports wagering operator shall prohibit any use of credit cards, either directly or indirectly, including without limitation, through an account funded by credit card in placing sports wagers. Can you also tell me where in there the limiting language, while physically located in Massachusetts, is in that regulation?
And that's how you can tell Eileen O'Brien used to be a prosecutor.
Brilliant.
No
notes.
I think the question here was based on some of the Slacks, it was kind of a question of, are you being willfully ignorant versus finding the answers? Or did you truly not think this was the right way to do this? And that was the heart of it. And I continue to commend MGC. I believe the total amount of credit card deposits in this situation aggregate was $88,000. So $450,000, as we talk about relative harshness of fines, feels appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I will say though about the clip that we've mentioned is, okay, it does say without limitations, and I
kind of get the guy's point.
But he does have a point. It doesn't say.
I'm reading a Massachusetts law. Why would it not be applicable to Massachusetts only?
Why do I have to apply to Massachusetts law whilst I'm in California and I'm about to take a flight? Yeah, I have some sympathy, but without limitation it's a creative way just to catch everything in without the regulations being a 10,000 pages long, I guess.
Yeah. Some of this is that reg writing is highly specific. And I think certainly Eileen O'Brien knows way more about it than we do, that generally maybe these caveats are put in there. I will say, I remember at the time being as someone who watched 100 hours of this, I certainly was fully aware this was how the credit card mechanism worked based on these meetings. So I don't know how the memo didn't get to you guys. But in terms of the statute itself, this is MGC all the time, though, is they do things that nobody else has done before. And then there's a certain amount of confusion. But anyway, so DraftKings paid that fine. They did have a win this week, too, though, which is we've covered several lawsuits on them, and a lot of them are about this deposit offer, which is, get up to $1,000 in bonus bets on your deposit. If you do max it out, you have to deposit $5,000 to get the 1,000 because it's only 20% of what you deposit. There's a lot of playthrough requirements on it. But in Southern New York, judge was just like, it's pretty obvious that this is the deal. You know, you can see it at the top. It says up to, it says this. Our consumer protection laws, I don't really see how you mess this up. She was basically the tone of it, having read the dismissal. So that was a good win for them.
Yeah. I think this is one that, again, I think we did a podcast about this when the suit was first filed, actually. Or
there's several that have been filed. So
yeah. I think we spoke about at the time that, yeah, we can see why this has been brought up, but if it's laid out in the T's and C's, then maybe you should just read the T's and C's. I mean, I think this is what we're learning from this entire part of the podcast,
like
is that everyone should just do some more reading.
Do that. I don't think any of us are going to start reading the T's and C's, let's be honest. Well, here's the other thing that, you know, being Americans, we have to make this tricky. The Massachusetts state case on this, on the exact same offer, essentially, the judge said the case can go forward. She didn't say that she was unclear. She said, based on the information given, I don't have enough knowledge to know if this person really had the information needed to be aware of what this was. So we're going to go through the discovery process, which is where, you know, you petition all of the evidence from the parties and stuff, and move forward to trial so that I have more. That is moving forward. There are a couple others that are a little further back in the process. There's one in Pennsylvania that's similar. Connecticut, they kind of determined this promo was iffy, I think is fair to make this assessment. Earlier this month, they agreed to a settlement with DraftKings where DraftKings pays $3 million back to Connecticut customers, specifically related to the $1,000 deposit offer. DraftKings admits no fault in this. But, you know, it has to be a sigh of relief that you do agree to pay the fine. And then thankfully the lawsuit gets tossed, at least one of them. And part of the deal is you have to say, are you getting paid in DK bucks or cash on these bonus bets? And it has to say, and just so you know, you have to play through X amount of times and it has to be very prominently displayed. And like they have to do that. FanDuel, the other operator in Connecticut, does not have to do that. And that was like the terms of that agreement.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if you're DraftKings, you take the wins where you can get them. But then also it gives you a little bit of confidence that you can win more of these. And obviously the Connecticut one, slightly different, but maybe they do take a bit of confidence going into Pennsylvania and New York. What I would say though is, handing back $3 million in Connecticut just shows the impact that this offer's had.
Yeah, I wonder.
Quite significant.
We joke about like billable hours for DraftKings lawyers, but if you in a state like Connecticut manage to get $3 million of deposits, it's not the worst.
Imagine what it's like in New York.
I mean, I think there might be some punitive element to this too. I'm not positive I don't remember off the top of my head on that briefing if that was just the exact amount deposited, but that's what it was based on, at least. And finally, we didn't talk about these, but they have been settled. There's a lawyer named Matthew Litt who is just a guy that likes to sue sports books. That's just like his bread and butter.
Don't we all?
So he was the guy who represented Sam A. Antar against BetMGM. He represented you might remember the psychiatrist or psychologist who did the Wall Street Journal piece. You know, I'm a counselor and now I'm addicted to gambling because they played mind games with me. He did the New Jersey woman who sued on behalf of her children. And he is doing the suit of the guy who worked for the Jacksonville Jags who stole money to play DFS on FanDuel. Mm-hmm. He lost Antar. However, he settled in the span of a week both of the DraftKings ones. They are settled, undisclosed amount, and good to go on that front. I think that's a huge PR win for you that you don't have the headlines of like, you know, guy steals baby's first communion money.
Yeah, that's not great.
Not fun,
it's
right?
Not great, no.
So, I mean, I know we're talking about a $450K fine, a $3 million settlement, but like all in all, this is not a bad month for DraftKings. You've got 3 lawsuits off your plate in terms of both PR and money and that sort of thing. You have a precedent now in New York, although I will say Massachusetts, for example, consumer protection law is very different and a lot more consumer friendly. So this isn't one that you get to just take around everywhere, but I wouldn't be surprised if I log into Pacer today. That's the downloadable site for these things, and see, okay, you know, in Eastern Pennsylvania, they've submitted this case so that the judge is aware that this one got tossed.
Yeah. I mean, it's a productive month. You can set precedents, you can take the lessons and move forward.
Yeah, and they get to move forward, unlike some people. So, quick break, and then we're going to just do a real quick chat on an operator that I honestly had forgot was even here.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
Welcome back to iGaming Daily. Prior to this week, Charlie, did you even remember if Betfred was still in the United States?
Yeah, I thought they'd left already, I must admit, or at least mostly left.
So yeah, over the course of the past year and a half, I think you've probably wrote some of them. At one point, I think they were in as many as 8 or 9 different states. And then as of January, they had pulled out of everywhere except Nevada and Pennsylvania. They kind of quietly shut down Nevada in January, and I don't think anybody really noticed because, for those who don't know, like, Nevada apps are just it's a completely different world than everywhere else because it's so much older and it's different players. There's no DraftKings, no FanDuel, whatnot. Then they announced that their partnership in Pennsylvania with Wind Creek Bethlehem, as of July 31st, they will be offline, no longer taking wagers. They've actually stopped taking wagers as of now. They're just online for people to cash out, and then they're going to have to mail checks and stuff.
Yeah, and that brings to a close another European operator in the United States, which is it's emblematic of the recession that we've seen in the last 12 to 18 months, really. I think most European operators are looking at America and thinking it's probably not worth the investment. The opportunity is no longer there.
Yeah, I think it was also you came over here thinking there was an opportunity. Nobody really expected the duopoly, but at the same time, I think a lot of them did come in. Some of them came in fresh out the gate. You know, they wanted to be here. Betway, Tipico, whatnot. Betfred came in a little later. Well, Pennsylvania is fairly early, but they all kind of came and went, and weirdly, the one that saw the duopoly and came in anyways, but a couple years later, Bet365, the success story of all of them.
Yeah, Bet365 are doubling down, if anything, and going further in the United States. They opened an HQ in Denver, Colorado, last year. I think they've got plans to have over 1,000 members of staff in the just for its US operations alone. So, yeah, in a trend where we're seeing a lot of European operators sort of give up, Bet365 are doubling down. What I would say is that I think there's a lot of soul searching going on at these operators. Or at least some of the people who were involved in that sort of period, I guess 2018 to 2022, when everyone was chasing this sort of gold mine. I don't think people quite realized how to reach US players. I think they probably just thought they could copy and paste what was working in Europe so well, and they've learned probably the hard way that it doesn't necessarily work. But again, I think it's a learning curve for everyone. And, you know, we've seen Brazil launch this year. I think there's a lot more of that sort of localization and thinking about how we tailor things to local audiences now than there was maybe 6 or 7 years ago when this first took place.
Yeah. The other thing too is unlike Brazil is state level to a certain extent. What you heard from everybody too was fees in every state. Every state does things differently. Massachusetts, you have to figure out this whole credit card thing. It was getting prohibitively expensive to keep going. And a lot of them came in at the heyday. You know, you can read the Caesars earnings call where they were talking about how some of these partnerships from 5 years ago are finally falling off the books. You came in where the price of doing business for both market entry, you know, team deals, the things like that were at an all-time high, and they had to pay these big premiums to get them. You know, granted, you stick around and you renew, you can get a better rate now, but it just was extremely costly. So here's my question for you. Say Kalshi wins this whole debate and prediction markets are the new way to offer nationwide sports betting on an exchange. Do you think any European operator comes back?
That is a huge question. I think potentially, but I think that if Kalshi win and prediction markets are the rage and they're allowed and they're legal, it's going to change everything. I think the entire sports betting industry in the US will look completely different. Maybe people come back. Maybe people have learnt the lesson and decide that it's worth another go. Maybe there's lots of consolidation and M&A movement. You know, what happens with Kalshi and these prediction markets? Is there movement on that front? I'm not sure, but it would blow everything wide open. What do you think, Jess?
I think, you know, Betfair is one. Granted, FanDuel's already here, but Betfair is a brand that already is an exchange where I'm like, okay, you maybe bring that in as like your, you know, we tried with FoxBet as a secondary brand and it didn't work, but maybe you bring that in as your exchange. I don't know. I think FanDuel carries a lot of weight, and being able to do the culture stuff that they're already doing in Canada carries weight. I'll be honest, I need to do research. You know, I'm sitting here going, note to self, make Tom write, what does it take to get a DCM license? Because I need to know. Like, it certainly seems like if you can just get a DCM license, which, to be fair, does seem like a process that takes a while. So maybe you go the polymarket route and just find one and buy it. But if you can eliminate the problem of having to mobilize 37 different markets, and you get California, Georgia, Texas, etc., I figure you at least have a meeting about it.
Yeah. I mean, if it's the Gold Rush 2.0, you at least have a try.
Yeah. All right, you can read all of those updates. Speaking of MGC, one of my favorite characters, Todd Grossman, is no longer with MGC, but has moved on to Prize Picks, and he very kindly granted us an interview that you can find on SBC Americas. Charlie, any shout-outs content-wise on your side?
Yeah, I'd like to just point everyone towards the Road to Lisbon series that we've launched on iGaming Daily. The first episode of that went out this week. That was with 888 Africa's Christopher Coyne. We'll have plenty more of those in the can and coming to your ears in the lead up to SBC Summit in September. So keep an eye out for that.
Keep an eye out for those. Keep an eye out for all the latest news, and tune into those iGaming dailies as well as all the rest, because it's where you go every day for all the latest, most important gambling news.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News Network or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.